thanks for coming. This is so important. You know, I don't know if you happen to hear, but Mayor Keeley says that they have reduced the homeless population by 36% this last year. What do you think about that? So, and thank you. I like your spirit. And so also, you know, we're seeing that the sweeps are increasing, and not only here in Santa Cruz, but across the whole state and across the country. And so, fortunately, people are pushing back, but Wes was telling me that they're making a new ordinance in Fresno that to go with the new clampdown. And what it's basically, you can get arrested just if you're found homeless walking in the streets if this passes, roughly. So this is definitely a major crisis. And then at the same time, it looks like we're facing World War III. Then that could be, it may have already sort of started. We don't know if that the Middle Eastern conflict is expanding. We don't know if the U.S. is going to hit another nuclear power station with a drone in Russia and Ukraine. We don't know what's going on with that, but if it's certainly going in the wrong direction, and if it escalates, it's going to mean open season against homeless people, because there'll be this incredible energy of like, there's no laws, no rules anymore, just go for it. And we saw that in World War II with interning Japanese, with Germans rounding up the homeless. So that's why this is more than just defending our friends who are currently losing all their property, all their belongings, day in and day out, and are finding difficult to be anywhere. But this is like becoming even more life and death than normal because of the executive order. And you may have seen videos of Newsom going around throwing people's stuff away. I mean, can you imagine being a governor, having sending somebody to come videotape you, taking stuff from unhoused people and throwing it in dumpsters? That's incredible. So we're living in really evil times, and the fact that you came out to this protest is so important, because just imagine if this, I don't know if this happened when Adolf Hitler was coming to power and they were trying to round up the homeless, but if it should have, and so I'm glad we are doing it now. The thing is that for Fred Keeley to be saying that that he's housed or reduced the homelessness by 36% in the last 12 months, you have about 150 of our people just died. That's like cuts into your population real bad, right? So then you got that, and then you got like they're trying to bus people out of town. A lot of us out here have like run into that, where they go, "Oh yeah, we'll give you a bus somewhere," and so there's that. And then even the statistics that supposedly Fred Keeley got from the point in time count aren't pointing to there being 36% of the people, like that they reduce it by 36%. It's just nonsense. Also, there's a conversation about trying to have some way of a buddy team. So if you don't see anybody for a while, we can look for them, because we are losing people into the mental health facilities. We're losing people into jails, and we are just losing people in these sweeps, because when we're in camps, we can find each other. But when you're just cast to the streets, we lose contact with one another. So we got to come up with some kind of system around that, I think. Tonight, so you may know they're going to have a cop city. They're trying to build a cop city here in Santa Cruz, where the Israeli Defense Forces come in and teach our police and other police how to beat the crap out of people. So anyway, there's a meeting tonight, and it's stopping Cop Country. Lessons from the Bay Area's campaign against Cop Campus for the Santa Cruz upcoming struggle. So That's really important. Because this ties in with so the demonization of the homeless, saying they're human animals, which is, if you're on nextdoor.com, they're always talking about these human animals, roaches, vermin. We got to get rid of them. It's just like in Israel, where the Palestinians are human animals, roaches. You know, that's why they're allowed to kill tens of thousands of people, because they don't believe they're people. So, like when you're in Palestine, you meet people who have come from other countries just to kill humans, because they know it's legal to kill Palestinians, because you will not even get a slap on the wrist. And it's really frightening that that is a reality in our world. So these cop city people are going to be training our cops to jack us up while we're trying to, exist in this collapsing economy during a world war. This is like nightmarish. Okay.
With the working class united, every land and age. Then just watch what happens when we follow the same sign. When the workers of the world combine. Year on the 1st of May, known around the world as International Workers' Day. So the rate at which the rent rises in this country, according to the General Accountability Office, which is a strange name, is that really their name? Or the General Accounting Office? That sounds more like it. Some GAO, whatever that stands for. The GAO says that as every time the rent increases by 10%, the rate of unhoused people in this country increases by 10%. There might be a correlation here. I wrote this song suspecting very strongly that there is a correlation. Each year there are more people living on the streets, their ranks growing geometrically. And in fact, the numbers are increasing by the exact same degree. As the rents are rising, the situation is clear. If we don't change this reality, there ain't no civilization here. But what if all the renters stopped paying the rent and showed our collective might? What if we kept on refusing until housing was a human right? Each year things get grimmer, feels more like the sting of defeat. More and more people working 2 or 3 jobs who still can't make ends meet. What if we all said to our neighbors, here's what we will do. If the authorities come to evict anyone, we'll all come and stand with you. What if all the renters stopped paying the rent and showed our collective might? What if we kept on refusing until housing was a human right? Each year is more dystopic, beyond what anyone can stand. But there was a time in this country when evictions were banned, when the Union of the Unemployed organized and they passed rent control 90 years ago. We can make them do it again. What if all the renters stopped paying the rent and showed our collective might? What if we kept on refusing until housing was a human right? What if all the renters stopped paying the rent and showed our collective might? What if we kept on refusing until housing was a human right? Housing was a human right. housing was a human right. Thank you. I wrote this song 5 years ago. Ever since then, things have gotten about twice as bad, if that was possible. Apparently it was. It's 2019. Looking around at the tents and trash and excrement scattered on the ground. So many mansions overlooking the sea. Stretch limos, Rolls Royces, and movie stars all over Los Angeles County. It's 2019. And the one thing I know is most people wish we could rewind to a couple of decades ago. Before the rents tripled, folk began to move out into their cars, into their tents, where drivers look on however loudly you shout. It's 2019. But in a black and white photo, it could be 1929. Wherever you go, in every single neighborhood, hungry people wonder why. Some make billions on a blockbuster while so many are left out to die. It's 2019, where every 8 hours someone is found cold on the sidewalk beneath the glass and steel towers in the wealthiest nation in all of human history. So far from paradise, so close to Walt Disney. It's 2019. There's no Dust Bowl, just real estate speculators and all the lives they stole. I don't know what to think when I hear the reporters say 1,000 people died last year living on the streets of LA. It's 2019. Because among the choices, it's probably better than listening to voices raging in my head saying point and shoot. And after you're dead, your face meets my boot. I don't know your name, it's better that way, cause I can't play this game. Who knows what I'll say? I feel like I'm burning, I've had enough to hear. It's time that you were learning the meaning of fear. I live in these apartments like your private property among your residents. Most of us agree that you're a piece of shit. How does that make you feel? We don't like you one bit, and that's for real. You think you're a thief, and you don't care. Seems your one belief is whatever the market will bear, whatever you can get away with, what you can make us pay. If we ever get justice, you should fear that day. Landlord, landlord. But it's not just you, it's all of your kin. The things you do cause the state we're in. You bribe the politicians so they let you off lead. Now the legal situation's just the one you need. For you to make millions, for profits to be high, even billions won't be with you when you die. I hope you find the death you seek, meet the devil that you serve. If you live another week, that's more life than you deserve. Landlord, landlord. In the class war you're waging, there's no question who's winning. But if there's any justice, this is only the beginning. The next act in the play will be written by the tenants, and until your dying day, you'll be paying penance. Your assets we seize, that's a fucking given. You profiteers of misery, start spending time in prison. Then you can get a job, figure out what you do best. You can keep the house you live in, but we're taking all the rest. Landlord, 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 landlord. Yo, landlord, yo, landlord, landlord, yo, landlord, landlord, yo, landlord. landlords where none had been before. Soon one man owned 500,000 acres on both sides of the Hudson River shore. He invited families to move in and give him 30% of everything they grew every year. This is how they pay the rent. His name was Van Rensselaer. He became one of the richest men on earth. In today's terms, $90 billion is how much he'd be worth. All this for doing nothing but saying all of this was his. I have the power of the state behind me, and I'm in the landlord biz. After 200 years of this and one revolution, another Van Rensselaer had another son. And this Rensselaer was greedier than his ancestors dead and past. It was the 1840s and things were changing fast. It was the straw that broke the back. The bottle was uncorked. They started organizing meetings, the tenant farmers of New York. They found the strength of numbers. They found the power of suggestion. They found each other asking the same question. Who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live a life of ease while others toil? Who gave you the right to be a rich man while the rest of us pay so we can work this soil? They vowed they would stop the rent collection. They vowed they'd bring this madness to an end. And when one blew the tin horn of distress, they soon found they had 1,000 friends, dressed in calico skirts, with masks upon their faces, on horseback, armed with knives and guns. They chanted and they yelled, they kept their farms, and they kept the sheriffs on the run. They asked, who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live a life of ease while others toil? Who gave you the right to be a rich man while the rest of us pay so we can work this soil? The governor's militias tried to stop them, but nothing could be done to break their will. And by 1848, the landlords buckled, sold their holdings to the farmers in the hills. Yes, they overthrew this feudal system, but it's replaced now by speculators and banks. And you can hear the homeless families asking of all the landed gentry in our ranks, who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live a life of ease while others toil? Who gave you the right to be a rich man while the rest of us pay so we can work this soil? Who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live a life of ease while others toil? Who gave you the right to be a rich man while the rest of us pay so we can work this soil? Who gave you the right? Otherwise, we got more songs about how much we dislike billionaires and other elements that are destroying the world. When you're working 2 jobs and living in a tent, when a house costs $1 million and you can't pay the rent, when politicians say they'll help but it keeps getting worse each time the landlord lobby pulls the strings of the purse, when the human right to housing isn't even part of the debate, you know you're living in a failed state. Millions of citizens are spending half their lives locked up in a prison for trying to survive. When laws must be broken just to have a place to stay. When the prisons pay the senators to look the other way. If you have to be a criminal to put food upon your plate, you know you're living in a failed state. When you're facing climate breakdown, when the trees are all on fire, when half the country's underwater, when a climate change denier runs the nation, and the opposition opposition party votes for oil rigs and pipelines. It's not so much a country as it is a corporation. Buckling under its weight, you know you're living in a failed state. When your nation is an empire facing daily blowback, and the only thing your leaders can think to do is attack. Bipartisan consensus that we need to spend $700 billion before the year's end on a military budget to make America great. You know you're living in a failed state. Almost every day, some psycho with a gun has to open fire on a crowd before it's done. When a music festival becomes a free fire zone, and all they can say is it's okay now, he was acting alone. Buy some armor, pray to God, and hide behind the gate. You know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. Almost 10 years ago, the train came through in the center of Lac Gigantic Blue. Scores of people died that night. What's been done since then to set things right? They'd like to know. In East Palestine, trains derailed in Washington State. They talked about reform too little, too late. The industry lobbied both sides of the aisle. Legalize bribery, American style. Ask the folks in East Palestine. Reforms discussed but never made. Ancient tracks, worn and frayed. As expected, the brakes failed. Dozens of rail cars derailed in the town of East Palestine. Carcinogenic chemicals leaked, killed thousands of fish into creeks. Poison air made people sick. You can hear the time bomb tick in the town of East Palestine. Acrid air across the county. Who knows whether to stay or flee? The EPA says it's all clean. It says so on this machine in the town of East Palestine. The next disaster's coming soon, as surely as the rising moon. The air, the water, and lives at stake. But we can't make them get new brakes, just as the folks in East Palestine. Just ask the folks in East Palestine. Thank you. 1831, the age of industry begun. For the working folk of Wales, life was short. With wages cut again, it was only sensible that then folks took over, shut down the debtor's court. The gentry pulled the wire, told their men to open fire and restore the rule of their estate. But as the night descended and the battle ended, the soldiers had all fled behind the gate. They chanted cheese and bread, and our children must be fed in the days. I forgot the song. Take two. They chanted cheese and bread, and our children must be fed in the days when Wales rose against the crown. They chanted cheese and bread with a bloody loaf above their heads. when the red flag flew in Merthyr Town. The message went out east and west to put the gentry to the test. The cavalry was ambushed and turned back. After so long playing defense, the time had come now when the workers were the ones on the attack. They chanted cheese and bread, and our children must be fed in the days when Wales rose against the crown. They chanted cheese and bread with a bloody loaf above their heads when the red flag flew in Merthyr Town. The crown sent soldiers by the score till order was restored. Then came Dick Penderyn's execution, another martyr for the cause, meant to give us pause the next time people call for revolution. They chanted cheese and bread, and our children must be fed in the days when Wales rose against the crown. They chanted cheese and bread with a bloody loaf above their heads when the red flag flew in Merthyr Town. This stuff's been going on a long time. There used to be a lot of people living in the Highlands of Scotland. They were all evicted. Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children, but someone said they owned what those 4 generations had called their homes across the Scottish nation. Allotments kept on shrinking while the rent would only rise. One by one the broken crofters left the open skies, the frozen shores of Nova Scotia in a far-off colony, or somewhere else across the sea. Once upon a century, from the ways of old, from something like the golden rule to the rule of gold, it's just the logic of the market. Supply and demand says to drive the people from the land. Instead of eerie silence reverberating all around among the gardeners and shepherds, you would hear the sound of the pipes and drums and choirs, of the songs that would be sung and the stories that were told in the Gaelic tongue. Once upon a century, you'd never think it could to turn into a field what had been a neighborhood. Once there were the promises of loyalty or clan, and then there was just profit if you can. If we travel back to a different time and space, it was possible for most to afford to live someplace, but it's the logic of the market, each investor's conviction. More money is just grounds for an eviction. Once upon a century, they cleared the highlands for the sheep. Most folks did not resist as the rent became too steep. They packed their things and moved, scattered far and near. You'd never know that they once were here. Just for the whims of capital, the biggest profits for the banks. You fight a war for empire, and clearance is your thanks. From the crofts of Scotland to the sidewalks of LA, if anything has changed, who can say? Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children.
You're coming way too privileged at the wrong one.
No one wants to hear those.
Actually, I gotta show you something. Oh, hi, how are you? See this right here? See these white lovely